Hey everybody, hope you all are doing great.
Hi, how are y'all?
We are going to be talking about a very important topic this evening, and I'm going to take a quick moment to share this on my personal Facebook stream. I'm pretty sure that the majority of you have never heard about what we're going to be talking about this evening, and I'm going to let Angela get us kicked off while I share that.
So it's Tuesday, and Tuesday means we're going to be bringing you the show called The Whole Policy, H-O-L-E. So we're going to be discussing things that typical policies do not cover, things that many people leave off their policies that they should have, or policy types that you may not even know about. We're going to be focusing on Tuesdays areas in which you may have a complete hole in coverage. So if you aren't covered in this area that we talk about on Tuesdays, it can negatively affect you in disastrous ways, and we're not exaggerating when we say that. So before we get started, if you will, please go ahead, make sure you're liking our business page, and then after you do that, go ahead and share this video, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it after it's been posted. Share it because somebody in your friends list more than likely has a hole in this area, and they want to know about it too. Make sure you're following us. Don't only just like our page, but next to it you'll see three little curvy things that look like a Wi-Fi symbol, and that means if you're following us. So if you have it set on default, that means you're only going to see this if we're paying Facebook to push it up. So switch that to see all posts. That way you can make sure and see the content that we're creating. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And today we're going to be, again, talking about the whole policy. And we're going to discuss something that, unless you take out a specific policy, like the one we're going to be discussing to cover it, you are not covered under any normal conventional policy, like a home insurance policy, auto insurance policy, life insurance policy. None of these things provide any coverage whatsoever for it. And that is firearms liability protection. So if in the event that you've got to use your weapon, your gun, your revolver, your pistol, in a defensive situation to protect yourself, things are going to be set in motion rapidly, and it's going to be more than just the police coming to investigate it. So whenever that happens, you're going to wish you had firearms liability, and we're going to discuss that with you today, tell you how you can protect yourself when that happens. So I'm going to be asking the questions about firearms liability, and Juan's going to be answering them for you to expand your knowledge. So let's go ahead and get started. Juan, if you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's go ahead and go.
Okay, so the very first question in firearms liability, there's a phrase called defensive gun use. So it's also often referred to as DGU. So what is defensive gun use?
Well, to answer that question, I want to show you something first. This is my own personal firearm. As you can see here, it is in fact empty. There's nothing in the chamber. I made sure of that. But I own this weapon not because I want to do physical harm to anyone else, but because I want to protect my family, myself, from physical harm from others. And not only to exercise my constitutional right, but of course there could be a home invasion, which is not unheard of in the Atlanta metro area. There are events that take place where people are robbed, people have been carjacked at gunpoint, and you never know when a situation could arise where you might actually need this thing. And so the reason why we have these is to protect ourselves, but that does leave you, when you have a great risk, you also have great responsibility. And so the opposite could be said too. When you use this and you have a great responsibility, you could have a great risk. So the reason why people have these things is to protect yourself, but according to statistics, there are some 1 million defensive gun uses over the course of each year. 1 million times a year, American citizens who legally own, operate, carry these things with a licensed manner, licensed professionals, where they have these things, and they actually are put in situations where they have to pull a weapon, or where they have to go grab the shotgun at night, the rifle, something to protect themselves, and that is a situation at which it opens them up to severe liability. So again, this is something that's very important. If there's 1 million Defensive gun uses, in a year's time, you can imagine how many Americans own these things, and by virtue of that, what kind of risks there are out there for that.
So a defensive gun use would be if you are having a gun at your home, a weapon at your home, and someone invades it and you have to use that weapon to defend yourself, or if you've been concealed carrying it and someone goes to carjack you or rob you or anything like that. Whenever you take out that weapon to defend yourself, that's called defensive gun use.
That's right. You know, I don't carry this thing for pleasure. Again, for those just joining us, you can see it is in fact empty. I'm holding it here now for illustration. I own this to protect myself, and just the very fact that you pull it out to protect yourself means that you could do it wrong. You could put yourself in a situation where you know there is, of course, a lethal responsibility here. And the fact is that if you own this thing and you are required to pull it out to protect your family or your own personal safety, I can promise you one thing: there will be an investigation. It will happen. And what happens is, if there is an investigation, there may be a criminal trial. Part of our nation's laws are set up so that there is a little thing called due process, which means that even if somebody broke into your home, they need to prove that you didn't make it look like that person broke in your home, that there was actually legally justifiable excuses and reasons why you had to pull that weapon to protect yourself. And so if there is a defensive gun use, there is going to be a time where you have an investigation, and it could go all the way to a criminal trial. And even if in a criminal trial you're given an acquittal, the jury says you're not liable for this criminally, that doesn't mean that there may not be another trial for civil liability. So there could still be a family suing you. You know, the crazy thing about our nation's laws, the way they're currently set up, is that just because somebody is broke into your home, that doesn't mean that you may not have to go to trial twice to defend yourself. First criminally and second civilly. And so even though that person who is the quote-unquote victim broke into your house, they still may take you to court, and you have to have some sort of protection in place in that kind of situation. It's not just about owning these things, it's about what happens afterward. What happens after you have to pull it. And I am a licensed concealed carry permit holder in the state of Georgia. And so this is something I think about with my family. If I have to pull this, it's not just about, you know, did I exercise myself according to the law? Did I carry my gun properly and legally? Did I pull it at the right time? Did I have justifiable reasons to pull it? But it's the fact that there will be a criminal trial, perhaps, at least, and there will be also potential for a civil trial. So big risks.
So just to recap, someone would want a firearms liability insurance policy in the event that they have to use their gun and someone is killed or injured who was committing a crime or whatever. Then you, of course, the police will investigate and determine if you were in the right or not. And in that case,
Absolutely.
you might have to go to court.
Absolutely.
And then after that, the family member or the person themselves, if they've survived, could turn around and sue you for damages.
That's right. I mean, think of it from the perspective of the police. The police show up to your house, and there's a dead body laying on your living room floor, and that person has ID or may not have ID, proving that they do not live at your residence. That doesn't mean that you didn't know them. That doesn't mean that you didn't have some sort of friendly interaction with them. That doesn't mean that there was zero animosity or angst between you. So they have to work through all those things, and a lot of times that involves court proceedings, both criminal and civil. You know, from the position of the police, they have to sort that out. That person is owed due process, and you have to go through that due process also.
And then the family members or something, even though police officers might investigate and say you're not at fault, they might decide to try and get some money out of the situation.
That's right. You know, it always seems like the folks who jump into, you know, a store and rob it all, their family always says, I can't believe that this would ever be the case. You know, they would ever.
I don't believe it.
I just don't believe it. That's just not the way they are. Well, guess what? That means that if they're saying stuff like that, then the chances of this thing going to court is even greater. And so you need to be protected.
Well, what are some features then of a firearms liability policy?
There's a lot of different features that a lot of different companies have out there, and there are some direct competitors to the product we're going to be talking about today. But before I get into that, I do want to just kind of touch base on some of the highlights of what you want a firearms liability policy to do. So first of all, you want legal defense in the event of civil actions. Again, this is not criminal. This is the family of this person suing you or trying to take you to court. So you want civil actions, legal defense, where it provides expert legal counsel to protect you against civil litigation arising out of the covered use of a firearm for self-defense. Then there is civil actions indemnity, where in the event of a adverse civil judgment, like the court found you civilly guilty, then you would want the policy to pay up to the monetary limits of the policy. You would want some criminal action legal defense reimbursement to reimburse you for the legal expenses of having to pay a lawyer to defend yourself in court. You would want a legal defense retainer, which is the big chunk of money that this policy would pay up front to protect you if you had to go to court, and then of course the attorney has to go to work and provide for defense. So win or lose, you're going to have to pay some legal fees, which is an important piece of the puzzle. Then you also want them to be able to provide a bail bond. What happens if you're just minding your own business, somebody breaks into your house, and the person that breaks in, it's the middle of the night, you shoot to defend yourself, and then you turn the lights on and look down and realize that this is somebody you knew. In a situation like that, it can get sticky in a hurry. If they knew you had a safe, or they knew you were unprotected, they knew maybe you didn't have the alarm set all the time at your house.
Out of town or something.
Yeah. So it could be a situation where all of a sudden that guy, and people start saying, hey, he knew them or she knew them. And then they are going to put you through the legal process. And in that case, you may end up in jail. And right or wrong, whether you are justified or unjustified, you may end up there. And so this policy, you'd want it to also pay some bail bond coverage. In addition to that, you would also want some compensation while in court. What if you have to take off work for weeks or months? You would want the policy to pay something to help protect you. Some per diem to help the daily expenses while you're in court, according to your normal income. Further, you would want some firearm liability coverage for a civil liability. What happens if you have your weapon in your car and somebody breaks the window, reaches in the car, picks up your weapon, and then goes on a crime spree and starts killing people? What happens then? Well, because it's your pistol, your firearm, then guess who's liable, at least for the loss of that firearm? As crazy as it is, you are liable. So this is my personal weapon. You can see that it is in fact empty. It's a Smith & Wesson 9mm, fairly common weapon. But somebody breaks into this in my car, takes my gun out, which I don't ever leave it in there, but if it happened, they would take it out, and then they would go and commit a bunch of crimes in that point. And then they're going to get that gun and they're going to say, oh, look, there's a serial number. Who is that serial number traceable to? And they find me, and then I might be liable in that case for some of their actions, at least monetarily. So that's a very big piece of the puzzle. You would also want there to be psychological coverage. What happens if you kill somebody? A lot of people carry this weapon to protect themselves. They try to psych themselves up for what would happen if somebody broke into the house, if somebody tried to hurt, rape, maim, kill, otherwise, abuse their family members. But the reality is that once you use that weapon to defend yourself, it's a hard thing for a lot of people to overcome, to imagine having taken somebody's life and then what? What do you do? So you want there to be some psychological sessions where you're able to get some help for therapy with licensed professionals. And lastly, you also want to have access to a legal defense hotline. You want to be able to call and speak to an attorney and have the attorney say yes or no, that is or is not a good idea for you to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. There's a plethora, a wide-ranging amount of things that can happen, and so you need to think through them. And having access to a legal defense or legal advice to be able to call in and get that information could be crucial, a big deal.
Really? Okay. Well, just to recap real quick, because that was a lot.
There's a lot of information,
things, and we want to make sure you completely understand it. Which, of course, you can contact us afterwards if you need.
And there will also
But-
be a link above where you can go and see some of the, read for yourself some of this information on
Yeah.
defensive gun
But
use.
just to recap real quick for those that are live and that are watching, because we do have some joining in and out here, the top things that you want in a firearms liability policy that we've researched some of our competitors don't offer, that ours has, is number one, civil actions legal defense. So that's to defend
Right.
you in a civil court, not whether or not you were guilty and should go to jail, but whether or not you should pay out money to the family of the person who you shot and killed or injured.
Crazy society, but that's a real part of
yeah.
our legal system.
So civil actions legal defense, and then civil actions indemnity. So in case they rule, hey, you weren't guilty and don't need to go to jail, but you do owe that family money,
Right.
then you've got to pay up. So that policy will do that. And then number three, criminal actions. So let's say you firmly believe you're innocent, but you've got to go to criminal court. Then you're going to need something that will pay out there if you found innocent.
Right.
And then number four, criminal actions, which is a legal defense retainer to be able to pay the lawyers up front for them to get started working. Number five, criminal actions of bail bond. So again, if you're arrested, even if you believe you're in the right, once you're arrested, you got to have bail if they approve bail to get out. So the policy will pay for bail. Number six, compensation while in court. Court trials can last a while, and not only that, even before it goes to trial in front of a jury or whatever, there's talking back and forth, and the meantime you're sitting there in court and you're losing out pay from your job, so it will pay out while you're out of work. Number seven, firearm theft, civil liability. Someone steals your firearm from your home, your car, off of you or whatever, and then does some crimes. You can be held liable for that. Well, this can help pay for that also. Number eight, psychological sessions to see a counselor, a licensed counselor, to help you through the process of downloading. I guess I can't think of a better word. All of the grief and the psychological trauma from having to use your weapon. And then nine, lastly, a legal defense hotline. Maybe a sticky situation hasn't arose, but it hasn't fully blown up yet, and you need some legal advice. You can call them. So those 9 things, what we just talked about, are on this policy that we're about to tell you right now.
There is an exclusion to this. So if you're watching and you know a police officer or someone who is using a weapon for their job, could maybe be somebody handling cash for a bank and they're carrying
security
guards.
Police officers.
This policy covers the personal carrying and the personal defensive gun use. This is not something to do with your, having this as a part of your daily job. There are policies out there for that kind of thing. This is for me and my weapon.
This is the standard homeowner.
Yeah. So if you are the standard homeowner, again, for those just joining, this thing is completely empty. But this is mine, and so this is for personal coverage. So that is something I did want to note for you this evening. So if you are a police officer and you got a policy like this would cover you when you're not in uniform, not on the job, not doing your duties. But while, of course, you're in the commission of those duties, this coverage will not apply.
Yeah.
That's right.
So what kind of coverage options do we have on our firearms liability policy?
Now, there are 5 levels to it, and I'm not going to go over them because it would take a lot to kind of...
And we've got a form, I believe.
Yeah, and there's a link above here that you can click on, and it will explain defensive gun use in greater detail, and there is a link that you can go to and actually see the application, the levels of coverage. But just briefly, the lowest level of coverage does provide $50,000 of aggregate coverage for civil action. But the Cadillac plan is the one that I like, and it does provide $1 million of aggregate civil action coverage. So if you are sued, by the family, they're trying to decide whether or not this is, legally justifiable. They don't believe that maybe criminal action is justified, but maybe civil action is. This is $1 million of aggregate civil action coverage. The Cadillac plan, I'm calling it that, it's not what it's labeled. It does also provide for $250,000 of total criminal aggregate. So you murdered somebody, you were found guilty of murdering somebody, even whether it could be maybe not straight out homicide, it could be something like, what's the word that's going to escape me now? the word is I'm gonna lose it here, but basically,
live bumps.
live
bumps on the road.
Yeah, bumps. But so there's that. But then there's also $1 million of firearm theft liability. So again, they break into the window, they reach in the car and steal your personal firearm, and they go on a crime spree, and the police find the serial numbers and they track it down and find it's you. $1 million of firearm theft liability coverage. 20 sessions of psychological support. So 20 sessions.
We got some people helping us out here.
Yeah, negligent homicide. That's a great one. Yeah, that's a great. Thank you, Michael.
Manslaughter.
For that. Manslaughter is another one.
Man's laughter.
Yeah. Anyway, so those two things are things that this does provide coverage for if you're found guilty of those. Now, there's up to $500 per diem while in court. So if you imagine making $500 a day, if that's what you make, you could get at least that or up to that much of coverage before the policy taps out. In addition to that, there's also $10,000 of immediate cash for bond. So it's usually 10%, so that'd be $1 million bond and provide up to $10,000 cash up front for that. And then there's also 5 hours of legal consultation through the legal hotline per year. And so that's a fantastic coverage. And that policy, just to compare, there's two basic leaders in the market outside of the company we use, which is Rockwood. There's two different other carriers out there. One is basically a firearms club. The other one is a firearms liability club, like this one. The differences between the two, the big firearm national brand that everybody knows the name, 3 big letters on the sign, that one is actually a very limited policy. It only provides up to $100,000 of civil action coverage, and it does provide $1 million of aggregate civil action, but it does not provide any coverage for per diem. It doesn't provide any coverage for
counseling,
the psychological counseling, none of that. In addition to that, the other club that I mentioned, it is just about a line per line itemized thing of what we just described, except that it does not offer psychological sessions here, and that is very important to be able to work through the after effects. So there are some national carriers out there. I will tell you, the big 3-letter club that's out there, their policy is more expensive for far less coverage. The other club is about on par as far as price is concerned, but it does not offer psychological sessions.
Yeah,
the coverage.
And we were talking just now about the Cadillac plan, as what Juan was just referring it to, is not something that's totally out of sight for everybody. It's really well priced. It covers the entire home. So when I say home, I mean the family members living in that home,
right,
and all the firearms living in that home or vehicle.
That's right.
It's one price. You don't have to worry about paying for each person or each firearm you owe. It's one fee for the year, and it covers everybody living in your home, you, your wife, your kids, and then whenever you have it in your vehicle or you're carrying on your person out and about, it's just that one price. And it's not really that far-fetched of a plan. It's got the things that you would want to have if maybe you're gone. You're on
right,
you're gone, and your wife has to. You may be able to think, oh, I probably could handle the psychological effect of having to kill somebody to protect my family. But then you go out of town and your wife has to do it, or maybe your 18-year-old son or something. And it's more traumatic to them. They just walk in and you go blam. What if there's a struggle or whatever? You have to think about these sort of things. And the best plan through Rockwood is extremely reasonable and really advisable. There's times where we'd say maybe a lower plan would be better, and maybe that's the case. But the top plan isn't some $3,000 a year policy we're telling you about. It's really extremely affordable. So
yeah, and I would also say we always say this whenever we give these videos out here, and that is that coverages mean things. When you have something on a line item on a piece of paper, and it's on a piece of a policy paper, it's not just a line item. It's not just ink on a page. It means
coverages
something.
mean things.
And that's right. And the fact that your homeowner's policy does not provide this coverage is a tremendous a hole that you need to fill.
I think we have a question or a comment here by
Sean. My buddy Sean was telling me his dad was actually a police officer. I know from working with him previously. His police service revolver, in the comments, was in a locked safe. They wheeled the safe out of the house. His gun was found 2 hours away in Kansas City and was involved in a homicide. Wow. So yeah, in that case, if the family had decided to sue, that's a huge hole in the coverage. Now, the fact that it was a police service revolver, I'm not exactly sure how the lines would be drawn there.
We can find out.
Yeah, we could find out. The main thing is, though, again, if it's not him personally using the weapon, on the job, that is not covered by this particular policy. But if it's him using this for personal defense or his personal weapon, again, in that case, that could be a huge deal. And so just the fact that it happens is another indicator that it could happen to you. If you have a safe, that doesn't mean that they can't take that bad boy out of the house. It doesn't mean they can't break into it. Doesn't mean they can't use it to commit crimes outside of your home. So very, very important policy coverage here. If you don't have this, you really should heavily consider purchasing a policy like this.
Well, how do they apply?
Very simple, actually. Unlike a lot of the other forms out there where you've got to, kind of go through a system to fill out an application and then we respond. This is actually something that we've provided to you where you can click the link above this video. It's going to take you to a form that describes defensive gun use in detail. It goes over just about all of the same items that we have covered. And then when you click on it, the little button there to get a quote, it's going to actually take you to a form that is a live application. And there's going to be a little pop-up that says, have you already submitted a quote, yes or no? You would select no, and if you've not submitted one. And then, of course, you would go through the policy. You could choose the different coverages. You could compare the different options there, the pricing, all of that.
It's extremely straightforward.
Basically a one-page application, and then the next page is payment. And once you are done with that, you are done. You are covered. And so it's live. It's not something that we have to interact with you on. That's why, again, when we ask you to like and share, sometimes it's to help our brand and to further the knowledge base that we're trying to provide you as free content. But in addition to that, this time it's different because what you're doing is you're actually being able to obtain coverage right there in the comfort of your home without having to talk to us on the phone, apply in person, etc. It's very, very easy. Again, just click the link, read through the description there, defensive gun use, make sure you understand what all it covers, and then click the button to get a quote, select the type of coverage you'd like, the level of coverage, fill out the rest of the information, submit the quote, pay for it, and it's a done deal. It is an annual policy, so it will renew annually, but it is, again, a whole year's worth of coverage for an extremely reasonable price, even at the highest plan level. Really, really affordable.
And think about the peace of mind, those of you that have weapons at home, or even if you're not carrying them around, concealed carry. You got it at home, you don't know what would happen that one time that completely could change your life. And if a judge, even if you're ruled innocent and a judge says you still owe that family money, you get someone who makes a good sob story or whatever, and the judge says you owe money. And if it's up there, your wages are going to be garnished, and that can severely impact you. That's just how it goes.
No, yeah, so, not speaking of any actual jail time or prison time. So yeah. This is a very invaluable coverage. Again, what we would ask you to do, though, if your agent has never discussed this with you, there could be two things at play. It could be that your agent does not know that this is a hole in the policy. Maybe we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They just don't know that it's a hole there. The other side of that could be that they don't have anything to offer you concerning that. They're thinking, well, you'll take care of this on your own, or you'll run into an ad somewhere on Facebook, on social media, on the Google. Maybe they're just leaving it up to you to encounter. But the problem is that if you don't have this coverage, if you haven't purchased a separate policy, again, it's not a part of a homeowner's policy. If you haven't purchased a separate policy, you have zero coverage. And so it's very, very important that you do that. Make sure that if you pick up a weapon, to carry it. And I do have my license. And again, for those who may have joined, this is, of course, clean and clear for the purposes of this discussion here today. But just because I own this doesn't mean my family is fully protected and covered. In fact, the very idea that I am carrying this opens me up to risks if something happens. So again, you want to go ahead and click that link. Share it with your friends who are your gun buddies. If you know somebody, family, friends, and they've talked about their firearms, or they've discussed Second Amendment rights. If there's any little context clues to the discussion, go ahead and share this video with them. We're about to finish up here. You can share it with them via Messenger. You can copy the link and send it via text. There's all a number of different ways. We will be adding this to YouTube also for ease of sharing. So again, if you're not covered, go ahead and investigate it by clicking the link. We do appreciate all of those who joined, who commented, who liked, who interacted with us in any way. We appreciate the fact that you took the time to do that today. We're honored, and we hope that you will share this. We appreciate your business. We appreciate your time. And as always, we want you to make it a great day.